Ryan Nobles. He is a Washington correspondent who, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, you just sat down with Marco Rubio. Is that correct?
Well, I didn't really sit down with him, Bill. It doesn't work that way on Capitol Hill anymore. You just got to grab these guys. They're running.
Grab them.
Yeah,
got it. All right. I believe. Let me rephrase that. I believe you were standing with Marco Rubio just moments ago.
Yeah, but I did talk to him one-on-one, and Bill, you just get a kind of a sense here up on Capitol Hill this morning that there is somewhat of a tide turning. Even though there's been so much controversy around the Trump White House, Republicans, pretty much chapter and verse have stood behind him and have given him the benefit of the doubt. We're starting to see some leakage there. I wouldn't necessarily put Rubio in that camp right now, but he is certainly skeptical about what's going on. I mean, essentially what he told me is that there are two sides to every story. He feels as though he's heard one side of the story, and it's alarming and concerning, but he wants to hear the other side of the story. He wants to actually look at the memo that James Comey allegedly wrote, that the New York Times and we have confirmed exists. He wants to see that himself, see exactly what it has to say, and then once he gets all the facts and information, then determine exactly what the next course of action is. But the fact that you're not getting like a definitive, we stand by the president no matter what anymore from these Republicans shows that the White House is in as perilous a position as it's been since Donald Trump was sworn in.
We became accustomed to McCain and Lindsey Graham, right, being critical of the president. But everybody else has been right there for this president, and it does seem like there's some wavering going on. What's the talk on a potential recording?
Well, that's the other thing that's hanging out there, right? I mean, the president, the only reference that we have to this is kind of an errant tweet where the president said that James Comey better hope there weren't tapes of their conversation. Well, according to our reporting yesterday, Jake Tapper talked to someone that's very close with James Comey who read from this memo that Comey has written, and according to them, Comey is hoping that there are recordings of these conversations because he feels that it will just vindicate and back up his point of view on this, that there was some level of pressure by the president to encourage Comey to end the investigation into Michael Flynn and then the investigation into Russia at large. So, aside from that tweet, the White House has given us absolutely no information whatsoever as to what the president meant by that. Was he the one recording? Does he think Comey was recording him? So we don't know if they even exist, but you're going to get to a position now where these committees on the House and Senate side are going to start to demand and subpoena any recordings that might exist. They're going to ask for every note that could possibly have been taken from these meetings because they're going to be forced to do that because the American people are going to want the White House to be accountable for exactly what's gone on here over the past month.
I know that you guys are reporting that Vladimir Putin is piping in this whole thing. Do you have any of that information?
So essentially what the Russian president put out a statement this morning saying that he would happily provide to the U.S. Congress the Russian readout of the conversation between President Trump and Sergei Lavrov, who is the foreign minister from Russia, to give their perspective as to what went on in that meeting, which I can't imagine that this in any way, shape, or form helps Donald Trump.
Right.
The question is that he's too connected to the Russians. I don't think that the people that he should be looking for assists from should be the Russian government.
Should be the Russians.
Yeah, and with Russia, is it out of the realm of possibility that they wouldn't doctor a document like that? Right. I mean, I wouldn't trust that.
And then that's the second question. I mean, essentially, Jeff, you've hit the nail on the head here. We've reached a point now in Washington where the person or persons whose credibility can be trusted the most is ultimately going to be the person who decides this outcome. So, and, essentially when it comes to these meetings between James Comey and Donald Trump, we have a he said, he said. Trump had a completely different view of what went on in those meetings. James Comey has another view. Now, if you're looking for if you're going to pick a horse in this race, James Comey has a long history of writing memos like this, and those memos have been used as evidence that have brought down previously very powerful people. The most obvious being Alberto Gonzales, the former attorney general, who he was a deputy attorney general under. So, James Comey, for whatever you think about the way he conducted himself as an FBI director, no one's ever questioned whether or not he is an honest person.
Correct. Yeah.
And the same be said about the president? Right. No. Not necessarily.
That is the big issue here. And there's another theory. That is mine. Who knows? Probably nobody has this theory in the world. but I do, and that is that this was all part of the plan in the first place. Let's not forget, Republicans were not in step with Donald Trump during the primary. You couldn't find many Republicans in the establishment that were all in on Donald Trump. They were there, but they weren't the numbers that obviously you've got a Republican in there and you get to push your agenda. So I can't imagine a Republican that wouldn't love the fact that Pence becomes president of the United States.
Well, Bill, if that were, the idea that there was some sort of grand conspiracy, I think is a little far-fetched. I think that's tough to pull off. And secondly, I just don't, the czar you know is better than the czar that you don't know. And I still feel that there are a lot of Republicans here who view Donald Trump as kind of as a powerful figure that elicits emotion and has a kind of a visceral connection with his supporters. And their hope would be that he could just somehow right the ship, and then these agenda items that they hold so dear can get pushed through, like tax reform and repealing Obamacare and all these other things. And, they're in a unique position here because they have control of both houses of Congress. So I think their best case scenario would be to somehow allow Donald Trump to ride this wave of controversy to get to a point where they can actually get something done.
Yeah.
If you play your theory out, Bill, even if you got Donald Trump out of the way, Mike Pence has been attached to the hip to Donald Trump. He may be connected to these controversies on many other levels. It's not going to end the look into his administration. It's not going to make that finish. And if they lose the midterms in 2018, you could see a scenario where then Mike Pence is brought into a difficult situation. So I still think the best case scenario for Republicans is find a way to get Donald Trump out of this downward spiral. Whether or not that's possible, I think that's the big question.
I got to tell you right now, I think the best case for Republicans was on the eve of the election, and that Hillary Clinton get elected president of the United States. They'd have had all the majority they wanted. Everything would have been just fine. But then Trump won. That's what they're all looking and like. And they got to be looking and saying, what in the world are we in the middle of here? I can't imagine that they're not. And keep in mind, Ryan, that's my movie, so don't go poo-pooing my movie, all right?
Well, to your point about that, Bill, to a certain extent, I don't know why we're all surprised by what's happened here in the past 3 months. Maggie Haberman, who's like the White House correspondent for the New York Times, maybe one of the best reporters in the country, she tweeted yesterday, Donald Trump is 70 years old. 70-year-old men don't change. What made you think that the candidate that we saw was going to be different as a president? Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, very good point.
He thrives in chaos. He thrives under the microscope. He thrives in the situation where everybody's out to get him, and he's defiant, and he's going to challenge the world. So the idea that this isn't the presidency that we should have expected is a little bit laughable. And, the other thing, Bill, that you have to keep in mind is he just doesn't know how this works, right? He views himself as a businessman. Yeah. And I'm sure there were many meetings that he had as a businessman where he called in someone, even maybe someone of power, maybe a member of law enforcement or a city councilman or something, and kind of gave them that pressure treatment that he gave James Comey, and maybe he even got what he wanted out of that situation. Right. The business world is so much different than the political world. So he maybe thought that he could do this at this level as well because he has an air of invincibility about himself because he is the president of the United States. So this is this is what we elected. This is what the American people. This is the type of leader that they picked, and this is what's happening.
Well, and let's not forget that in the entertainment world, every ounce of all of this would be equivalent to ratings. It would be the #1 show in the country. It would make Apprentice would be huge.
It is the #1 show in the country.
That's a very good point. Thank you for that correction. All right, Ryan, out of time. Listen, very interesting. We'll be watching on CNN. And again, as always, we appreciate the time we give you.
I'll be on at 9 a.m. if you want to actually see me on CNN. So
okay. All right. Good stuff. All right. 9 a.m. Ryan Nobles, thank you so much. And we just spoke with Marco Rubio.